spent a lot of time over the last 4 years rebuilding my life. When I first walked away from my marriage, I thought rebuilding meant finding another place to live, getting my finances back in order, rebuilding my health, rebuilding my business, and just trying to put the pieces back together. And don't get me wrong, all of those things mattered. But sitting here today at 55 years old, I can honestly tell you they weren't the biggest part of rebuilding. The biggest part was rebuilding the front door to my life. Because for most of my life, I let way too many people walk right through it. Some came carrying love, some came carrying friendship, some came carrying promises, empty promises. But a whole lot of them eventually walked away carrying pieces of me. I didn't realize it back then because I thought that's just what being a good man looked like. You help people, you show up, you forgive people, and you give them another chance, then another, then another. And I confused having a good heart with having no boundaries. Those are not the same thing. Looking back at it, I can see something that I completely missed for years. The people who truly cared about me never demanded unlimited access to my life. They respected my time, they respected my peace, and they respected the word no. The people who got angry when I started setting boundaries, those were usually the people benefiting from the fact that I never had any. And that one took me a long time to understand. Because I've always been the kind of guy who wanted to fix things, not just broken equipment, but broken relationships, broken families, and broken people. I spent years trying to make everybody else's life easier while slowly making my own harder. And honestly, I believed that was what a good man was supposed to do. And one of the biggest mistakes I made was believing history automatically earned someone a permanent place in my life. And it doesn't. Just because someone has known you for 20 years or they are your own family doesn't mean they deserve the next 20 or the rest of your life. Time isn't character. Shared history isn't loyalty. Sometimes all you've really done is tolerate something for a very long time. And that was a hard truth for me to admit. After I left my marriage, I spent 6 months living in my pickup truck, then about a year living in an old camper. And eventually I bought this little piece of property and put this old single wide mobile home on it. And I know a lot of you have heard those stories. But from the outside, it probably looked like I'd lost everything. But something strange happened. The less that I had, the more clearly I could see people. And when there wasn't anything left to gain from me, a lot of those people disappeared. And honestly, I'm grateful that they did. Because they answered a question I didn't even know I needed to ask. Was I valuable or was I useful? There's a huge difference. Some people love you, some people love what you do for them. And when you stop doing, you find out which one they were right quick. And that hurt. I'm not going to pretend it didn't. Because I looked back at all the years I'd spent helping people, dropping everything when they needed me. Giving my time, giving my energy, and sometimes giving money I really didn't have. And when I was the only one sitting in that truck trying to figure out how I was going to rebuild my life, so many of those same people were nowhere to be found. It made me wonder if any of it had actually mattered. If all those years of putting other people first had changed anything at all, but here's what I've come to realize: their response doesn't erase my character, it reveals theirs. I don't regret being someone who helped people. I regret helping some people long after they'd shown me exactly who they were. And looking back, that wasn't kindness. That was me refusing to accept reality. The truth is, some people don't value your heart. They simply learn how to use it. And the strange thing is, for a while, I thought the people who disappeared were the biggest lesson. Boy, was I wrong. The bigger lesson was the people who didn't, the people who stayed. Not because they wanted to help me rebuild, but because they kept bringing chaos into a life that I was desperately trying to put back together. And that was the part I didn't understand. I used to think loyalty meant never giving up on people. At 55, I don't see it that way anymore. I've learned that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is remove someone from your life. Even if you've known them for years, even if they're family, even if you still care about them. Because some people don't just fail to bring peace into your life, they actively take it away. And I know that's hard to hear because it was hard for me to admit. Because I kept believing people would change. I kept believing if I just explained myself better, if I just helped them one more time, if I just gave them one more chance, things would finally be different. They weren't. The only thing that changed was me. I became more exhausted, more anxious, and more stressed. And somehow I convinced myself that that was just the price of being a good man. It wasn't. It was the price of having no boundaries. One thing rebuilding has taught me is that peace has enemies. Chaos hates peace. Manipulation hates boundaries. Control hates independence. And the healthier your life becomes, the more uncomfortable some people become. Not because you've become a worse person, but because you're becoming harder to use. That realization changed everything for me. I used to think if someone got upset with me, I must have done something wrong. Now I realize sometimes people are upset simply because they no longer have the same access that they used to. Those are two completely different things. I also learned that not everyone deserves an explanation. I spent years explaining myself, why I couldn't help, why I couldn't come, why I needed time, why I made a decision. All it ever did was invite another argument, another guilt trip, another attempt to change my mind. These days, no is a complete sentence. That doesn't make me uncaring. It means I've finally learned to care about myself too. If I have one regret, it isn't that some people are no longer part of my life. It's that I didn't make those decisions sooner. I held the door open for people who had been showing me for years exactly who they were. I kept hoping for a different ending while reading the same chapter over and over again. I wish I'd understood sooner that protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's necessary, especially after you've had to fight so hard to find it. Today, my life is quieter than it's ever been. I don't have the biggest house. I don't have the nicest truck. And I'm still rebuilding financially. I'm still rebuilding my property. I'm still rebuilding parts of myself. But I have something today that I didn't have for a very long time: peace, real peace. And I've learned that peace is too valuable to hand over to people who never respected it. At 55, I finally understand that access to my life isn't something people automatically deserve. It's something that they earn. People who encourage me, stay. People who respect my boundaries, stay. People who are genuinely happy to see me becoming a better man, stay. The ones who show up only when they need something, the ones who leave me feeling drained every single time, and the ones who mistake kindness for weakness, those people don't get the keys to my life anymore. Not because I hate them, not because I'm angry, but because I finally realized something I wish I'd known decades ago. Being a good man doesn't mean keeping every door open. Sometimes being a good man means having the courage to quietly close one. And looking back over the last 55 years, I honestly believe that that's one of the most important lessons rebuilding has taught me. Y'all, I'll see you in the next one.